Hello, welcome to a new video. This is Mothership, and today I will be doing a review. Now, because Legend of the Sea Devils is coming out just later this month, I thought I would review the two Sea Devil stories that have so far been made. Starting off with The Sea Devils from 1972, and then we're going to move on to Warriors from the Deep in 1984, and then we're going to review Legend of the Sea Devils when it comes out. So, to start off, let's discuss the plot. Multiple ships begin to go missing. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Jo are on their way to a prison where the Master is being held for all of his various crimes. First thing I want to mention is, in this story, you can tell that it's got pretty good production values. Now, of course, you do have the occasional unflattering shot of the Sea Devils, which do look a bit wonky, however have become completely iconic. But a large amount of the episode is filmed on actual naval ships and everything, and there's just a ton of army shots and everything. So it is cool just how much they've put in. There's a ton of shots of Doctor and Jo riding on jet skis and everything, so that's very nice. Now, another positive is that Jon Pertwee and Roger Delgado are acting some of their best. They are fantastic. They just give off this incredible, really strong vibe that really gets you hooked on the story. They really steal the screen. So speaking of the other characters, we've also got Captain Hart, who gets introduced in, I believe, part 2 or 3, and he's a fantastic character. I mean, there's nothing too much to him, however, they do a fair amount with him, and he is quite a fun character and helps the Jo and the Doctor along on the way. You've also got the prison manager, Trenchard, who is a great character who stays around until around part 5 when he dies. Sea Devils kill him off. And he's the prison manager, and he's been lied to and manipulated by the Master, because he's telling him that there's Soviet spies or whatever, and they're invading. And Trenchard is being manipulated because he's very patriotic, so he goes along with it. And even when he finds out that Sea Devils, he gets this kind of glory and power figure stuck in his head of himself being the savior of the earth, and how celebrated he will be. So that's great writing. I really like the character of Trenchard in this, and he's got a good performance. Then you've got the military officer who comes in to intervene when the Doctor is making diplomatic relations with the Sea Devils, and he fires on them, which completely ruins the whole event. Now, my one problem with this is, it's very similar to the Silurians, where the military man attacks them and it ruins the diplomatic relations, and I know that's kind of intentional. However, I just feel like it's a bit too much of a close repetition, and I do feel like they could have worked around that in a little bit more of an interesting way. So let's go to the Sea Devils. Now, their design is fantastic in itself, and it's become iconic, but they do look quite goofy in every shot they're in. They have got a good presence, but they look quite cheap. Now, it's endearing cheap. It's not like the Web Planet cheap of you looking at the screen and wondering why you still watch this show. But it's a kind of endearing cheap, and the episode is still fantastic, so it didn't get in the way. It actually kind of makes it a bit more fun seeing the Sea Devils looking so janky. I mean, Warriors of the Deep, the next one that I'm going to talk about in this series, it's not got the best production values, it's got some pretty good ones. But the Sea Devils do look quite good in that one. Anyway, there's also some great model shots with the submarines underwater. And that's good, but probably my biggest gripe with this episode is the music. The music totally gets in the way of many scenes. I mean, there's some good tracks, like most of the music that plays when they're in the submarine, but most of it is this weird, loud clanking or random noises that they seem to consider music. And, I mean, again, it's kind of endearing, but this isn't in quite as good of a good way as with the Sea Devils design, because it's really gets in the way, and it's there almost the entire time, and pretty much every track is a bit bizarre, and a bit too bizarre for me. I mean, most classic Doctor Who tracks are a bit bizarre and odd, and not quite ahead of their time sometimes, but this one is kind of taking it to the next level, to the point where you're wondering if this is even music. So that's a downside. But there are a ton of more positives, like, for example, here we get, I believe, the first, or one of the first name drops of reversing the polarity of the neutron flow, which would go on to become a massive running gag in the show and still used every now and then today. I love how in part 6, when the Doctor and the Master are trying to escape, and they're just in the cell, the Sea Devils put them there, and the Doctor's like, well, we're all gonna die here, unless we escape. And then it just cuts to them having escaped, and you're not told how they escaped, they just did. That's fun, I like it. I feel like that's just a great, some might see it as lazy writing, but I feel like that's fun. You know, it's a bit of good comedy. Now, you've also got the ending where after the Doctor and the Master escape from the Sea Devil prison, the Master just hops in this military vehicle and the scene just whooshes off, and it turns out that the guy that the Doctor was just next to was actually a plant. It was somebody the Master hypnotized and put in his costume and, you know, whatever. So my first question is, the Doctor and the Master escaped that prison together, and it's clear that the Master must have faked going unconscious on the ship and, you know, put to sleep, you know, hypnotized whoever was caring for him and put them in the zoo and got them to do the rest of the stuff from there. But, I mean, firstly, where did he get that Master costume? Where did he get it? It's odd. You know, where could that have possibly come from? Secondly, we'd already seen this done before in Terror of the Autons, so it does feel a bit cheap that it basically just got reused completely in this one. So that's a bit of a downside, but then again, that's just at the very end of the story. There's some great imagery of the Sea Devils coming out of the sea at points when they're invading. And, of course, the cliffhanger to part 2 is just absolutely iconic, and it's one of the few parts of the episode that actually has good music that hits its stride. I mean, seeing all the Sea Devils come out of the ocean and aim their guns at the humans and the Doctors, the Masters on the cliff, controlling them, is just great. And then the beginning of part 3 when the Doctor activates the minefield, you know, stuff like that. It's cemented itself in Doctor Who history and become quite iconic. So overall, I'd give the Sea Devils a pretty decent 8 out of 10. This is probably my favourite third Doctor story. It's just got great pacing, action, and I guess I forgot to mention, the voicing for the Sea Devils is fantastic. The music may weigh it down a little, but it's more than made up for in the writing, budget, and acting from Jon Pertwee and Roger Delgado in particular, but everybody else does do a great job. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see everybody in the next one, where I will review Warriors of the Deep.